Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this next installment in this recent series of webinars that we're doing here for ClubExpress. We have sort of two different kinds of webinars. We've got webinars that are general overviews of ClubExpress, and we have webinars that are sort of deep dives, topic specific. And even on some of the overviews, we're going to be making some changes. So we'll do like overviews of the way, say, a bicycle club is handling their club in ClubExpress, or a yacht club, or a ski club. It's not just this is what ClubExpress is, but this is how people are using it. And we're looking forward to doing more of those things. But today we're going to be dealing with a particular set of functions. We're going to be dealing with photos, photo albums, and web graphics. They're all sort of related, but they all have their idiosyncrasies. We'll do this little introduction, and then I'm going to go into a demonstration, and then we'll do a Q&A. If you have questions, what I really want you to do is enter them into the chat, because we have Victor from our support staff monitoring the chat, and he'll try to answer as many questions as he can as you ask them. And at the end of the session, we'll revisit the chat, and Victor will read some of the questions and some of the answers, and maybe there'll be some things that we want to show or to demonstrate. A recording of this webinar will be available on the ClubExpress website. There's a resources page here, and we have a webinars tab, and the webinars tab shows you the entire webinar schedule, some of the recent ones and the ones that are coming up. And at the bottom, we've got a list of the webinars that we've recently recorded. So you can look at the recent webinars. For example, Dan did one on a deeper dive into member management. I did one a couple of weeks ago on blast emailings. And so you can go and actually watch these things. We also have video tutorials. One that I published the other day was on the Advanced Content Editor overview. And in fact, we're going to be using the Advanced Content Editor today to show how you would insert photos and graphics into a web page. There is one other thing that we'd like you to do. If you find that you like ClubExpress, which I hope you do, if you could go to clubexpress.com/reviews, this will take you to a page where you can actually enter some reviews into a couple of these different review sites. So what I'm going to talk about is the differences between photos, photo albums, and web graphics. We'll talk about who can upload them, who can administrate them, and display options. We'll take a look at and view and search some photo albums. And we'll talk about managing web graphics and the folders that contain web graphics. We'll manage photos and photo albums. And then we'll figure out how to use photos and graphics in custom pages, and look at a couple of different display format options, uploading web graphics, resizing images, things like that. So once you understand what tools you have at your disposal, then you can figure out how to best use them for your organization. What we're looking at now is the Northwest Balloon Club, which is our demo site. It's democlub.clubexpress.com. We actually have a number of demo sites, and this one is sort of for clubs as opposed to professional organizations. And since I'm not logged in at the moment, what we're looking at is the menu that is public facing. On the homepage here, you've got graphics that are in the header area. You've got graphics that are in this custom page. Graphics are used all over the place on a website. And they are a little different than photos that are used in a website, because a graphic could just be a logo, or a graphic could be some text. And photos and photo albums are handled a little differently. A web graphic is a graphic that you upload that you can simply drop onto a page in a website or drop into your theme template. It just simply displays at a particular size, although you can resize it when you're placing it. A photo is something that is uploaded either by you or one of your coordinators or a member, if you've enabled them to do it. And these photos are available in multiple sizes. There's the high-res version of the photo. There's what's called a screen size version of the photo. And there's a thumbnail version of the photo. So they can be placed on the page and in any one of those formats, and they can also be linked to, and they can be put into slideshows. So You think about the web graphic, or what's just referred to as an image, as being a static single size representation of a graphic, whereas a photo comes with 3 sizes and you can do multiple things with it. So I'm going to log in as Martin Smith, and you'll notice that the menus here don't say anything about photo albums. But when I log in as Martin, who happens to be an administrator, a few things will happen. One, he owes money, but I'm not going to pay now. One, because he is an administrator or a coordinator of a particular function, he gets a control panel link at the top. But because he's logged in as a member, he can see photo albums. Now, the first time you click on photo albums, and photo albums were put onto just the member menu. When we click on photo albums, the first thing that happens is you get this search tools box here. And the search tools box, by default, shows the 30 newest and most recently changed albums. And so I can actually come over here and take a look at this. And if you want to search, say, by a photographer's name, it's going to give you the box to fill in the name, or search by a member name or whatever. But right now it's showing just the most recently added and updated albums. Once that search box goes away, the way you would get it again is to go to your Page Tools widget that's either floating on the right side of your page or on this slide out Page Tools widget. And so you can bring the search tools back up anytime you want. But if I say now show all albums, now it's broken out into a couple of different categories. So we have a ballooning category, we have a social events category, and these are what's known as member photo pages. So not only can you, as a site administrator, upload photos, you can allow people to upload photo albums. So this is the way these look, and if I double click on this, I can see the first of the pictures. I can see in this one here, there are 5 pictures. I can click on any one on the bottom, or I can click on the arrows left and right to step through them. I can download the high-res version by clicking on this little download arrow, if and only if I, as the album creator, am allowing high-res downloads. So that's the original size of the image that was uploaded. I can click over here to go full screen, and I can come back and take it off of full screen. I can start or pause a slideshow, and I think it has about a 5-second duration between slides. And if I want, I can share this album on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and that would take you into a login process. So this is sort of the public face, or in this case, the member side face of photo albums. You can decide as an administrator whether or not member photo albums or member photo pages actually show up on the list. And if they show up on the list, do they show up at the bottom of the list or at the top of the list? So we'll see that when we go and configure photo albums. So I'm going to go into the control panel because I'm an administrator. And if we go to the website tab, you'll see that there's a photos section, a photo album section, and down in the bottom in the setup area, there's a web graphics section. So let's take a look at the web graphics first. So as I mentioned, the web graphics are static sized images where only one copy of the image is being stored. I can either look by file name or by title. If I say file names start with or contain, so if I wanted anything that contains, say, GIF for a GIF file, and I click on that, it's going to show all of the files where GIF is in the title, in whichever folders. And you'll see here that there are 2 folders represented. There's a folder called How Balloons Work, and there's a default folder. And you'll see that when I search for file names, this first column is file name. But if I search for titles, here are the web graphics. And so if I looked for delicious, then it would show only those files for delicious. Or I could look into particular folders. So we can create folders here by managing folders. And you'll see that we have a default folder that's got a couple of hundred files in it because this is a demo site and people do tend to upload graphics when they're playing around with the site. And so we have a folder here that's called logos. If I wanted to make another folder called sponsors, I could do that. And then I could upload things into sponsors. And because these have no web graphics in them, I can delete them. So if I come back to the Web Graphics Manager, and let's just clear this for a moment. And if I want to add a web graphic, I get to select the file. And let's go into, say, a logo. And I can call this NW Northwest Balloon Club logo red. And I can put it into the default folder, or let me put it in the logos folder. So if I save that, and now if I were to search for anything in the logos folder, that one should show up. And if I click on it, I can see the graphic. This is my stunningly creative graphic that I made this morning. And I can go in and edit. Now, you're not editing the graphic itself, but you're editing the data about the graphic, the title of the graphic, what folder it belongs to, or maybe replace the file with an updated version of the file. And you can copy the URL of the image to the clipboard. So if I click on this, it gives me the entire URL, which I would copy here and just open up another browser page and paste it. It would just show the graphic. So that's just something if you needed to use it in some other environment where you needed to look at it. That's really all there is to web graphics. You can put them into folders. You don't have to show any particular folders. And this is where you would store graphics that are just going to be generally used around your site. Now, photos are a little different. So if I go back to the control panel and I go to photos, the search criteria are a little different. If I search for ball, we're going to have a lot of things that have the word ball in it. We'll have balloon clubs. If there was something with baseball in it, it would also show up. So this lets you restrict the view. And for any one of these things here, we can click on the view icon. Similarly, we can click on the edit icon. And unlike a web graphic, we have a little more information. We can have a caption that would go with the photo. We can add tags. So the user can add tags, or you can pull down from a list of predefined tags, which you can then manage. You can give the photographer name, and you can give information about the date. And here's where you decide whether or not this photo can be downloaded in high resolution. Sometimes you don't want to allow that, and sometimes you do. And so you would just save that. If I wanted to, I could get rid of this and search just for anything with the balloon tag in it. And here are the items that have the balloon tag. You can manage tags here by looking at the master tag list. And you can create tags and add master tags. I don't want to go into that at the moment, but the fact is that you can go in and add a tag that is appropriate, and that way it'll show up in the list. On any one of these photos, you can preview the photo, and you get a window that shows the photo. You can edit the properties of the photo. Once again, you can copy the URL. So I can add a photo. If I want to add one photo, it's going to ask me to select the file. And so I'm going to do this one here, balloon field. And we'll call this over field. And nice photo of a balloon over the field. And this is a balloon. John D. We don't know who did that one. I'll make it John Dechtall. And we can use today's date. So now if I look for all photos here, balloon over field shows up because I had put it into the balloon tag. I put in that, a tag is kind of like a category. You can have many tags on any individual image. I can also add multiple photos. So I can come over here, and here you select files. So if I want to grab a few of them here, they all show up, and now I can rename these sunset, green, blue sky. And once again, just to make it easy, I'm going to say I want to put this in balloons. And when I click save, all three of these are uploaded. And because I'm searching for balloons, they all show up here as well. And if I need to, I could then go into any one of these, say the blue sky, and say, oh, I don't want to allow download of the high-res version on that one. So if I view green, we see green here. And if I were to use a blue sky on a web page or in a photo album, it would not allow downloading. So let's take a look at photo albums. So photo albums, we can search for the photo albums. There are two types of photo albums. You've got club photo albums or organization photo albums, and you've got personal photo albums. Photos that are uploaded into these albums are actually uploaded into the photos list that we just saw. So anything that you upload into an album becomes a photo that is available on the website. And if we look at this one here for annual picnic, you'll see that it's in a category called social events, and the other one is a category called ballooning. And we saw that earlier. If I open this, say, in a new window, you see we have this category called ballooning, social events, and then member pages are at the bottom. You can go and manage the photo album categories, which is much like setting up a new tag or setting up a new folder. You add a category, and you can decide what order the categories will be viewed in. So although this says pages, this really should say albums. How many albums are currently in the ballooning category? So for any one of these, you could say, oh, okay, I want to edit this album. So the properties of the album. Well, if I click on this, what we get are a list of the items that are in there. And you can then also configure this particular album. So who is this album available to? So it could be to members only or to any website visitor. You can turn it on and off the visibility because you might want to prepare an album that's going to be available on a particular date. You've got an event coming up and you want to get this whole album ready and you want to make it available on a particular date. So you could just turn it invisible, work on it. When you're ready, you just turn it on. And then you can put in a description of the album. And so you also put in what you want it to be called on the menu, because you can put individual albums on the menu as well as putting the entire photo album mechanism on the menu. So it's kind of like putting a particular page on your menu. And similarly, you can add one photo, which will let you upload it from your hard disk, or multiple photos. So I'm going to go back to the album manager, and I'm going to add a photo album. And we'll call this the Northwest Balloon Club Fly-In. And we'll make it available to anybody. Great fly-in photos. Category. I didn't pick a category. We'll call this social event. Let's call it ballooning. All right, so now that I've created it, I can go add photos. Now, I can select a photo from one of the existing photos. So if I look for a photo and show for a balloon, I can pick the balloon over field. And for some reason or another, the preview isn't showing up for all the pictures. They showed up for me earlier. I'm not sure why they're not showing up at the moment. But normally, as you move through these, the preview would come up. So I'm going to add balloon over field. And you see it shows up in here. And then I'm going to add multiple photos from my hard disk. So let's just grab a couple of these. I open those, and I'll put in titles later. And again, I want to put these in under balloons and save it. And it will upload all of them. And now that NWBC fly-in, the Northwest Balloon Club fly-in photo album is available. And if I click here on photo albums, it's already here. So what you're doing here is live on your site. And if I decided that I didn't want to make it visible because I was waiting for some more photos, I could just turn it off and make it invisible. So this is the way of putting in some photos and combining those photos into an album. These are, what I just showed you was a club album. Now let me show you what happens if I want to do a user album. So I'm going to open up another browser here and log in as Manny, because I was logged in on that one as Martin Smith. So this one here, I'm logging in as Edge. And the way a user can create an album is by going to their profile. And if you're allowing users to create their own albums, there will be a photo albums choice here. So Manny can add a photo album, and we'll call it, we'll just call it Manny Photo. And we're going to let anybody view it. My balloon photos. And now we're going to add a couple of photos. And we'll just put 1 or 2 photos in there. And let's just pick up the flotilla and mountains. And I save those. So now if I come back over to the other page and I refresh, now Manny's photo album shows up in the member photo pages. So this is the list of all the member photo albums. And if I were to go into edit on this, we can look at the photo album options. So a couple of things. Do we allow member photo albums? Yes or no? If they are displayed, do we display them at the top of the list, the bottom of the list, or not at all? And then within the list, do we want them sorted by by title, within category, and by ascending order, descending order, or most recently updated at the top? And then there's this other option here, which is an important option. I mentioned that when you upload a photo, it gets uploaded into 3 sizes. You get a thumbnail photo, a screen size photo, and the high-res photo. The screen size photo is the one that when you click on it, it shows up in the middle of the screen. Well, I think the default was 450 pixels. That was sort of useful for years past when people had smaller monitors. So you get to decide what size, the longest dimension of the photo that's going to be stored. So some people will set it to 640. Some people will set it to 1024. You get to decide what that intermediate size should be. And just knowing your users and their typical bandwidth and things like that, you can determine what's going to be the size that will pop up when they start stepping through these things. So let's take a look at how you would actually use some of these. So I'm going to go back into the control panel, go into custom pages, and I have a custom page that I've called demo photos. Now, I created a new video just published last week on the advanced content editor. We are now in the advanced content editor. So if you go to the recent videos, the tutorial recent videos on the ClubExpress resources page, you can see this, and it was also in the email reminder for today's meeting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maximize the content editor, and I've got a couple of different rows set up. And for those of you that are not familiar with setting up rows, you place your cursor wherever you want it, and then you decide what kind of row you want. So if I click over here, 60-40, we get something that is 60% on the left, 40% on the right. And I'm going to delete this row because I really don't want this row. So we're going to insert a web graphic. Try a couple of things here. At the top of the screen here is a toolbar, and there's a plus icon, a wrench icon at the bottom, which brings up some additional toolbar items. But we're going to be dealing with these two here. One is insert photo, one is insert image. Insert image inserts one of your web graphics. So if I click on insert image here, and if I want to grab if I just show all the files, it's going to show all of the ones that are there. But if I want to show everything in the logos folder, I can just grab that one. And now the preview is working properly. And you can put in some alt text, which will display when the graphic is not being displayed or when you hover your mouse over it. So if I select it here, it shows up appropriately. Now, the other thing that you wanted to note is that I'm going to do exactly the same thing here, and to show you that this does support transparency, because this was a PNG image that I made. And so if I take this here and show files and put it over here, you'll see that because I've got a blue background on this row, and the background is transparent in the image, you can overlay the image on a background. Whatever's behind it will show through. So that's a useful thing to know, that a PNG image as opposed to a JPEG image, JPEG doesn't support transparencies, but PNG does. So when you use your graphic editor to create a graphic, you can decide whether or not you would ever want to put it on top of another photo or on top of something else. If we take another graphic, we'll just grab pretty much anything here. Let's see what happens if I select this one. I guess that's not a good one. So this isn't a good one. What I can do is I can right-click on it, and I can change image, which brings up this dialog box again. And so I can put it in here, and it's resized it for me. If I want to resize it to make it smaller, rather than going into the HTML code and changing the code on it, I can right-click on it and change the properties. So among the properties I can change is I can change its size. So I want to make it 300 pixels wide, and because it's linked here, the height is going to change also. I can, if I want, put a border around it. Say if I want to put a red border around it, that's 3 pixels wide, and click on it. Now I've changed the size of it, and I put a red border around it. So by changing the properties here, right-clicking on it, changing the properties, you can tweak your image. You can change the padding on it. You can change the description. You could change the alignment. So if you want to make the alignment so that it goes to the right-hand side of its container, you can click on that, and now it jumps over on the right-hand side. I'll get to this image floated left and image floated right in just a couple of minutes. That's working with the web graphics. Working with a photo is a little different. In this case, we're going to click on the Insert Photo icon. And it says, okay, what photo do you want? So let's take a look at all the ones with the balloon tag and show photos. And if I choose balloon over field, when you select it, you have to display which format you want. So if I say that I want to display this as a link, I put in the text. If I want to display as a thumbnail, I put in a thumbnail. In this case, I want to embed it in the page, and I can decide whether or not I want to allow high-res download. If I embed it as an image on the page, it will automatically try to resize to the container. But if I allowed a high-res download on it, I would be able to download it directly. If I go to use a link here, and I take a photo, let's go here, and let's go for, say, blue sky, and we'll call it blue sky photo. That's just going to put a link over here. And if I put it in as a thumbnail and grab another photo, and we'll call this green. And if I save the page and now view the page, we have the embedded image. We have a link here to blue sky photo. So when I click on it, this comes up. And we have a thumbnail that when I click on it, that image comes up. So those are three different ways of placing a photo onto a web page. Now, you can do something else. You can place a photo album on a web page. And the way you do that is by coming over to this page sidebar here, click on Insert Widget, choose Insert Slideshow, and figure out, well, what album are we looking for? So you can look for a particular category. Within a category, let's use the best club photos. And you can decide how wide and how narrow you want to make it. So I'm going to make it 400 by 300. And you get to decide whether or not you want to include just the images or the navigation buttons. So if I save it and now save the page, you see we have the slideshow here, and I can step through it to just pop out the image like this. So this way you don't have to view it on the page. We can go full screen here. We can show the thumbnails, so you can go to individual photos. And it's just a nice way of showing a photo album on a page. The last thing to note is looking at a very common thing that people want to do for a web page, and that is to float an image on the left or the right of a row. So I'm going to delete this row for a moment, and I'm going to add a new row. And this row here, I'm going to say I want to float the image left or right. So if I come over here and I say image floated right, I would put whatever text I want over here, right-click here, change the image, and so if I go to this one here, so this is going to float on the right-hand side. Now, floating is an important thing because when you're dealing on a web page like this, one of the advantages of using these page rows is that they become responsive, meaning they can change depending on how they're being viewed. If I resize this and I make this narrower, in fact, let me scroll down a bit, and I make this narrower, it resized and is now sitting above the text. Similarly, if you come up here, you see this row was 3 equal columns, 3 equal divs. And because they were one of about, I think, 4 or 5 different row types that can stack, when you come in close, then what it's going to do is do its best to be able to show all the information. Now, certain rows don't stack, like the 50-50 doesn't stack. And if we look at custom pages and look at the advanced content editor, you'll see that in the tutorial, I say this is div 1 of 3. Page rows with the 33, 33, 33, 25, image float, they can all stack. So when you come in close, you'll see that they rearrange. And this is very useful for mobile phones and things like that. So that's the reason why we try not to use tables in custom pages in order to just format images. One other thing I wanted to mention was there is an email consideration. When using photos in an email, if you put in a thumbnail, expect when they click on it to pop up the image. That's not going to work. It's just a thumbnail. Although the mouse hover will show a pointer, clicking on it does nothing. I'm not quite sure what it would do in an email, but you could always put in a link to the URL if you needed to, but then you'd wind up with all sorts of issues with, well, who's allowed to see this? Are they membered? Are they logged in? Et cetera, et cetera. Victor, why don't you let us know what people have been asking in the chat?
So there's quite a few questions here. The first question was, is there a way to insert a photo into a news article summary? Unfortunately, there's not. The summary field is text only for the news articles. You can insert a photo or an image into the news article itself, but not into the summary. And for any of these questions that we get where there is not a way to do that, we will go ahead and add it to the feature enhancement request list. Doesn't necessarily mean that it will be added, but it'll be considered for addition to the platform. The next question was how to move a file out of a default into a new folder. In the web graphics, you can go into the file itself, as he's showing here. And if you click on the pencil to edit it, it gives you the folder at the bottom that you can choose where that goes to. That will not affect if that file is placed somewhere on the site. So if you have it on your home page, it won't affect that file on your home page. It just on the back end changes the folder that it's located in.
Yeah, a folder is really just a property of the file. So who is my parent? We're not using a path. You're not changing the location of it. We're just simply, a folder is much like a category.
Is there a limit to the number of files displayed in a folder? The display, as you can see here, will show up to, I believe it's 50 files, and there's pagination, so you can actually choose the different pages for those. But generally what you'll want to do is you'll want to specify in your search what you're looking for. But again, if you don't know, if you've got lots and lots of files, you can definitely go page by page there.
Now, there in the administrator's guide, there is, however, a practical limit on the number of photos in a photo album. And the administrative guide says you really shouldn't try to put more than about 300 photos into an album. If you have a lot of photos, break them up into a couple of different albums.
There was a question about where was the location of the logo that's used on the banner or basically in the page header of your site. That's also located within the web graphics. So that Northwest Blue and Clo header that you see at the top there, that's actually an image there that is located in the web graphics. If you've
it might be this one here. Yeah, or one of these.
Yeah, it's one of those. So, but it's definitely located in the web graphics. And to actually change that, if you want to just change the photo, you can do so within the web graphics. But you can also change it by going into your website look and feel. So that'll be control panel, website look and feel. and then you'll see page header on the site editor on the right-hand side. So that'll allow you to change the photo there or the background image. Okay. Okay, and then you covered sizing. I just did want to mention that the default size for photos is set to, I believe, 450. So if you're noticing that your photos, when you add them to a slideshow, and you've got large photos that you've uploaded, are not showing that large size, and it's still really small, you will want to go into your photo albums, go to your photo album options, and make sure this photo size, the max screen size, is set to a larger number. Right now, the maximum size that you can use is 1024 pixels. He's got it set right now to 640, but yeah, 1024 pixels is the maximum size that you can currently use. So if you set it to that, you've got large photos, they'll be resized down to 1024, but they'll appear nicely on a larger screen.
You know, the 640 and the 450 were when people had much smaller laptops and people weren't running high def video monitors and such. So 1024 is a very, very good size. And it's probably what I would recommend for a club.
And then somebody asked, is there a way to print or export a list of all the categories and tags? Unfortunately, at this time, there's not, but we'll ask to see if we can get that added to the feature list. In the select photo dialog, the preview window often does not show anything. And is there a reason for that? That's something we'll need to bring up with the developers if there's an issue with any of those photos not showing up.
Well, as a matter of fact, you see that it didn't show up for me when I was doing a select into the photo album also. And the funny thing is that it was working for me earlier. It was working for some pictures, but not others. And at the moment, it's not working, but it was working for me earlier this morning. Oh, it's like this one's working, but we will look into that.
Can a photo or album visibility be limited to a committee? Photos and albums currently can only be limited to members or to the public. We can't limit it to a specific group beyond that.
Now, you could, I suppose, make a page or a document that's limited to a committee and put them on there. But the point is that they are still available to anyone who can pick from photos. Oh, one thing I didn't mention before is when we go to the control panel here, in addition to the administrators, you can also assign coordinators. So who is allowed to administer just photo albums, just photos, or the web graphics? They don't have to be the same people. So if you have somebody that you want to be able to upload graphics into your club albums, not necessarily their personal albums, they can do that through the control panel if you give them coordinator rights on the appropriate function.
What is the best size for photos to upload? Are there size limits, and is there a best size for albums? So that all comes down to personal preference as far as what the best size for an album would be. As far as the size limit, we've covered that. You can change that within the photo album options. Again, yeah, best size to upload, again, personal preference. You can, anything that you go above what you've got listed in your photo album options will shrink down to that size when uploaded.
Right, but the high def version, the original photograph, can be pretty much any size. Now, if I were to upload something to Facebook, for example, I resize photos to 2048 pixels, and the reason for this is that I found that if I uploaded to Facebook much larger size, when it did its resizing, it didn't do a very good job of it. So a very high def image didn't look very good when it was being displayed at lower definitions. So I find that a 2048 size photo is pretty good as a high def photo for people to download. But if you've got a 20 megapixel camera and you're doing high tech detailed photos of your balloon mechanic event, and you want to be able to see every little character on there, and it's a really big graphic, well, that's fine. Maybe that's the right size for that kind of image. You don't need it for a talking head image. but you might need it for a screenshot. You might need it for something else. So the actual size of the high def photo, I don't believe we have a limit on that. But
I believe actually there's an 80 meg limit.
oh yeah, if you've got an 80 megabyte graphic, that's a pretty big graphic. But the screen size, that intermediate size, is the one that typically you want it to look really good. And that's where the 1024 comes in. But you can upload a bigger picture than that, and it'll just resize in that intermediate size. Now, by the way, if your high def version is smaller than your screen size version that you're calling for, it won't upload a high def version. It's not going to just make a second one at the same resolution as the screen size.
So there was a question about if you insert an image into a custom page or upload an image, basically using the dialog box within a custom page or the home page or using a content editor in general, does that get saved to either the photo albums or the web graphics? Yes, it does. So if you've got, for example, if you insert an image on your custom page or upload a file in from there.
So if I do a web graphic here and I choose upload new file, it will go into the web graphics area.
That's correct.
Right. And any photos that somebody uploads into their album goes into the photos area. So they're linked photos and photo albums.
Right. So you showed how to reduce the size of an image, but when you resize, will it still retain good clear pixelation? If the original image is a large or a high resolution image, that should not pose an issue. But if it's a low res image to begin with, and you resize it to a larger proportion, it may look pixelated. So it all comes down to, is the image originally high resolution?
Yeah, and if you look at this one here, it says embed full size. Well, this is a much bigger picture than is being displayed here. The issue is that when you're placing it on a web page here, we're doing our best to show you the entire image. So if I save this right now and I look at the page, the image is this size. But if I resize the border and make it smaller, now that image is actually getting larger because it's on a row by itself and it's trying to expand to fill its new container. So that's just something to understand, that if you take a high def image and show it small, it'll show small, but it's going to try to show it the best way it can.
And that comes to another point about the way those images are also, again, displayed on a mobile device as well. So, and for emails as well. The best practice is, if you want it to appear a certain size across all platforms, across all devices, resize the image before you upload it, and it should appear that way to everybody. If you have a very large image, as you've seen, if you shrink the screen size or an email client doesn't read it properly, it will display as the extremely large image sometimes. One of the other questions was, are these features available in the other content editors for events, forums, and emailing? The events, yes, the events module does use the advanced content editor. Forums uses a scaled down content editor, which I believe is text only. And then emailing has its own set of content, well, it has its own content editor that does allow for photos and images, but has different, instead of rows, it has elements on the right-hand side.
The emails are still using tables because of the nature of email readers rather than using divs. So it's a little different, but yes, you can add graphics into there.
Can albums be limited to administrators only? At this time, I don't believe that. Yeah, it's
No,
available
at the moment,
to.
no.
You can
Members,
make it so that it's not visible,
right.
and then only admins will be able to access the album. They won't see it within the gallery, but it's members only or public only as far as that's concerned there. And then, can members access photo albums but not be allowed to change the album or its contents? Yes, if it's a club album, unless they have coordinator access or admin access, they would not be able to change the album if you display it.
Oh, one thing to show, when you look at a photo album, you can tell if it's a personal album because the personal album, the club albums all just have a title, but the personal albums will always have a title and the name of the member. Spring Balloon Ride, Martin Smith, Manny's Photos, Manny Diaz. So that's one way you could tell if you were looking at it, not in this view where it's searched by show all albums. If we just look at the 30 newest, that's the way you would tell that it is not a club album if it doesn't have a name at the end.
A couple other questions here. See here, are coordinator rights connected to the whole photo function, or can you limit a coordinator to a specific album? Unfortunately, coordinator rights are for the entire function. So for the photo albums or photos, you could not limit that coordinator or administrator access to just one photo album. There's one, will you consider a webinar to create email campaigns and communications that look as professional as constant contact with well-sized photos and accompanying text?
Yeah, we're open to all sorts of suggestions for upcoming webinars. I don't know if you saw that a couple of weeks ago we did a webinar on an introduction to emails. I think it was a little bit about the content editor in there, but maybe we could have one of our designers do such a webinar. But we will put it into the request list.
That's all I've got in the chat.
So once again, what we'd love for you to do, if you get a chance, is take a look at clubexpress.com/reviews and enter a review. If you have any questions, further questions about photos and graphics and such, by all means, stop by the admin forum, which is a discussion forum for administrators, and you could get to that from the support tab on your club, but you have to have forums enabled on your club. So, Victor, any closing words?
I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and hope to see you soon.